All right, so before we start with Monday's recap, I'm going to go ahead and save you the trouble. I'm going to place a timer somewhere around here. Now, this is to save you from the yapping that I'm about to commence. For you, it will be 2 minutes. For me, it will be 7. Well, because I have to edit it and, I have to get everything prepared.
Stop the cap.
Just be happy, okay? All right? Yeah, it could be worse. I could be yapping for 7 hours. And the second thing before we get into the review is... look at this bicep. Yeah. Okay, I'm done. Let's get into the recap. All right, so to start off the markets, we got an immediate rejection of higher prices, and we moved all the way down to yesterday's prior control. It was within the 50 percentile of orb ranges. That gives us, on regular days, we have about a 62% chance of orb breakout happening. But on those 62% chance, 95% of them happen when we are in a 50 percentile over the last 5 years. And then the second idea, or the second reason why I decided to go short, was because at 944, that candle closed below the midpoint, which gave us about a 76% chance of getting a breakout lower. Now, as far as entry, high volume node, I didn't notice this at the time, but we were testing the VWAP's 1 standard deviation as well too. My main driver for this trade was an ORR opening. I just kind of expected we would test this value area high from Friday once more. And after a little bit of a pullback, we finally got that break lower. Also got that 5-point extension hit as well too. Now the second trade was a little bit later. After price had kind of grinded its way up, I decided to take a retest of point of control high volume node after seeing it kind of wick back a little bit. After this nice rejection, I just placed a little bit of a market order right here at this high volume node and kind of watched it as it played out. One of the biggest things though, my invalidation or my mental fold'em zone was right here below this wick. If we got below this wick, I did not want to be in this trade any longer. However, we did get a little bit of a push up, but that candle closed actually coming right back down to where my entry was. Now this candle was very, very interesting to watch. One thing I wanted to make note was the volume of this candle. Even though we're getting this aggressive push up, there is like little to no volume happening here, even with the delta. So I had made clear-cut exit right here. If this candle would happen to magically flip red, I was going to be out no matter what. And that's what happened. The candle magically flipped red, right? So that was it. I was out there for a little small loss. So that was the trades, all trades taken for today. Now let's go up into the main takeaway that I want to kind of go over. I've been typing out of course, my pre-market and my post-market review. And then I let ChatGPT challenge all my assumptions and kind of use it as a sparring partner to kind of make deeper insights in some of the things. And one of the biggest things that I've noticed was if we played the film back from not this trade, but this one right here, before this entry, I had an opportunity to enter here. Problem was it was 943 and it was too close to the midpoint for me. Whew, bars. And it made me come to a new insight on what I need to do. And it's very simple. I need to run a test to figure out what's the probabilities of a 944 close below midpoint, giving price was already 5 points below the midpoint at 943. I'm trying to pre-run that 945 or pre-guess that 945 close, and I need a little bit of data to see how effective would I be depending on certain scenarios. So that's the biggest insight that I took away from Monday, and my time is almost up. It was 7 minutes for me, but it's most likely going to be 2 to 3 minutes for you, right? Right, Editing Omar? Hey, Editing Omar here. No, I couldn't save them. Dude, you talked so much that I just kind of gave up midway. So, yeah. Sorry, guys. Yeah. You see it? Look at it. New chair, baby. Look at this bad boy. Hold on. Let me give y'all the 360 really quickly. Let me speed it up. Alright, so today was Tuesday, and well, you notice anything different? Hold on. Yeah. Besides that, let's go ahead and jump into the recap. You know the drill. 2 minutes like yesterday. I hope so. Our first trade was or breakout, and well, this wasn't the best trade. There was multiple reasons why I shouldn't have taken it. Main one being that we kind of had this sideways action for most of the range. This may not be the best price action for a breakout. And then that followed up by this kind of you may want to call it a bell curve type of look or whatnot. It doesn't really work out too well for me. We probably should have avoided this trade, but you know, what's a better way to learn than to lose, right? So we had taken this trade here, but I had quickly got out soon as I noticed that we break right above past midpoint. That was my invalidation. As soon as we broke above midpoint, I know that our odds of getting a breakout drops from 77% to 26%, and I'm not comfortable with that. So we just go ahead and close the trade, and then we just move on to our next trade. Trade number 2 was a little bit better. First thing you notice from the trade entry, part of the reason why I decided to actually take this idea was part 1 CVD was super strong for the bullish side. We just kind of broke prior highs, just broke above VWAP. Yeah, the 5-minute candle didn't look the greatest, but given that CVD and was pretty strong, I've seen multiple occasions where CVD was this strong. We had some type of pullback like this, and it still ended up closing near the highs of the candle. So even though, you know, not the best, it wasn't something that completely turned me off. Plus we got the little retest of prior high here as well too on the 1 minute. The one thing that I didn't have was a high volume node, and that is the main entry, or I should say the main factor of my trade setup alone, and I didn't have that. So you could say this trade was kind of dog shit, if we're being honest, which it was, and part of the reason why I got my balls liquidated.
You what?
Biggest lesson for the day was just what to avoid when looking at stat orbs, right? This was one of those days where, like, okay, cool, the sideways movement for the majority of the orb session or the orb range, the first 15 minutes wasn't a good indicator, right? The news at 9:45 where I'm looking to enter, not really another good indicator. And then mainly a bell curve looking profile, volume profile, which kind of leads to mean reversion tendencies, is also red flag number 3. So the biggest lesson that I learned for today, being that it's Tuesday, was just to kind of look at these 3 things. It also opened me up to a new route of just kind of looking at what shapes do volume profiles make. Just looking at these volume profile sessions and kind of understanding what these shapes could, you know, mean, what caused the shapes to form, and then mainly what could they be indicative of moving forward. Did I say that word right?
Indicative.
Why is this recording?
Because you forgot the recap.
You're right. My bad. Let's go ahead and get into it then. We only took 1 trade today, being that it was just straight stat orb, and it played out beautifully. Setup very simple. We're within the 50th percentile again. Entry point was right here. There's multiple reasons why I would want to enter here and not really anywhere else. I'll be patient, wait for this entry. Point number 1, high volume node. That's also current session point of control. That's also VWAP as well too. That is also prior high. I entered early, way before 9:44. This was one of those days where little risky, right? Could have easily closed low here, and like my whole setup would have been just invalidated just like that. So it didn't. We got lucky, right? Price continued to make its way through, and then it finally, after a little bit of sideways chop, hit my 5-point extension. This isn't really the main thing that I want to talk about. What I really want to talk about is something I saw on a YouTube video about volume profile shapes. This is called a triple distribution, according to the YouTuber. 1 hump, 2 hump, 3 humps. Usually signals continuation. Today was one of those days where we broke out of VWAP's standard deviation, or 1 standard deviation, which I'm running tests on to currently find out some information, but I think I have a theory that may actually kind of hold up and give me a little bit of edge when it comes to playing VWAP. Anyway, it's for a later date, right? We broke out of it, right? And this volume profile is from 9:30 to essentially 10:26. At 10:26, you have a triple distribution type of formation in the profile, current session profile. And once we break out past this volume node, well, we continue to trend upwards for the day, and we literally don't even tap back into the 1 standard deviation for very long without bouncing right back out. So very strong, very directional day. This is something I'm looking at. It's an observation, something that I'll pay attention more often to. How the current session profile develops. What shape does it make? And what could it mean? But I'm gonna keep this one short because I wanna go to bed and it's late. So yeah. See you Thursday, guys. So before I get into the lesson recap, this is going to be the longer part of the video, the more unedited part of the video. It's going to provide a good bit of valuable insights. So if you can stay patient through the yapping, you can gain some insights that may potentially even help you on your journey into next week. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started with that. All right, so it's Friday morning, July 4th. And today we're going to go over the lessons that we had learned for the week. Sorry if my voice is a little deep, you know. I just kind of woke up. All right, so there was 3 main things that I had learned. Step 1 is just simply avoiding a certain type of trades for stat orbs. There has been a condition that I've seen only once, but from my experience in the market so far, I can use that experience to tell that if I can see these conditions with the stat orb, it's not going to be a good play to execute in these conditions. So there's 3 main things that I want to look for. It's 1, a bell curve profile. 2, no drive from the open at all, right? Sideways movement during the first 15 minutes when the stat orb is printing out. And then 3, it's news at 9:45. So the books is thinning at around 9:44, 9:45 where I'm looking at the entry. Books start to thin, which makes price easier to move around. So there's a theory, right? And the theory is the thinner the books, the more impact the news is gonna have, right? If you notice the spreads are getting bigger on the down and the contract sizes get smaller and there's more gaps in between, you potentially might have some high impact news. And that's one of the biggest things that I've noticed here. This is what I'm talking about. So this was a day for me where it was like, I know these conditions is gonna play out. Now, first thing is I've seen multiple times where a price will open across a pretty near to a value area and it will just chop around it, right? That's pretty annoying, but it happens sometimes, right? But the biggest thing here is on the current session profile of bell curve. This is just showing that this is the most transacted area. We're most likely looking to mean revert back to this area every time we move away from it, right? And then you can see, like, for example, even this move right here, right? This is a substantial downwards move. You look on the 1 minute, you look on the 5, you look on the CVD, it's pretty strong. Problem is though, like, this bell curve tendency here, we're just gonna revert right back to the mean. That was first clue, right? Second clue is, of course, the sideways move. The theory behind orb is like the opening drive that happens, you're expecting a breakout for a continuation or a reversal against that opening drive, but you gotta have an opening drive. It's pointless if you don't have an opening drive. And just kind of what I've been noticing so far from trading it, and I don't have all the data yet. Of course, as I gain more data, my opinion on this is going to change, and that's normal. But what I noticed is when you have an opening drive, right, it's more successful. No matter what size or the orb is or what's the percentile, that opening drive where a candle closes heavily bullish or heavily bearish is a very good sign in potentially looking to take an orb. So when you get these sideways movement, right, it's kind of like counterintuitive for an orb setup. Essentially, you're saying when you take an orb breakout, I'm expecting an extension of this this move. But if it's ranging, what extension are you playing? Because you can't tell if it's going to be extension to the upside or extension to the downside. The last point I made was news at 9:45, and I explained why a couple seconds ago. So that's the first lesson that I kind of took. The second lesson that I learned was I was trying to find a model where I can pre-guess where my 9:45 candle is going to close relative to the midpoint. So is it going to close above midpoint? Is it going to close below midpoint? I had ran a test. Basically, I had a hypothesis that if we close at 9:45 above or below midpoint, what are the odds that 9:44 candle will do the same? And basically what I found is that when there's a 5-point distance away from midpoint at 9:43, and this is all at 9:43, you have a 93% chance of it closing above midpoint at 9:44. And of course, this changes, right? So the smaller the distance gets, the lower your chances are, of course. That just makes sense. And the more, or I should say, the larger your distance gets, the higher your odds go up. But as you can see, from 9:40, 80%, 9:41, 82%, 9:42, 86%, and then 9:43, 93% or 94%. So the sweet window, really honestly, is right here. The thing that I have to keep in mind is that not at 9:44, depending on where we close, we have a 77% chance of breaking down in that direction. It could be affected if we're entering at 9:42 and 9:43, right? So this is only on the premise that 9:44 we close in an exact same direction as the 9:43 candle. If we don't, then it's going to you're going to kind of have wrong stats, and you, according to the stats, have taken the wrong trade. So that was the second thing that I learned. Last but not least is VWAP. So this one I'm not really going to show because I'm still running tests on it and I'm still looking at it. But it's something I'm definitely going to look into more going into next week. When we open up in VWAP's 1 standard deviation, we have a tendency to be less prone to breaking out with directional movement. What I mean by that is, in simple terms, every time we break out, we have more tendency to have a failed breakout than an actual one, which means we may break out of the 1 standard deviation and then return right back to it. It seems like that's what happens majority of the times that we are open up in a VWAP's 1 standard deviation range. So that's what I've kind of learned this week. A lot of few lessons that I've learned. And as far as like P&L, I mean, we can take a look at it, but I don't really care to, because for me, I want to learn like all of these things. I want to learn like essentially the nuances and how they affect. So this week, a negative week of $58. I honestly believe the only reasons why I'm having negative weeks is because I'm putting the wrong sizing on the wrong setups. It's like I'm putting my A+ sizing on my D setups or B setups versus putting my A+ sizing on my A+ setups. But for right now, that's how it is. I'm doing this intentionally because I'm still testing out my so-called A+ setup, right? So I think the next best thing is, of course, as I'm going to move forward, I'm planning to scale down on my high volume node retest plays. This was something that I've been doing for a long time. I've been doing it ever since March. So I scaled up because it was a play that I used a lot. But now I'm going to scale down on it. I might go from 5 micro contracts to 4 because it just hasn't been performing too well, and especially in the markets, ever since March, it's just been kind of break even. I don't think it has edge anymore, but we'll take a look at it and see. But I know one thing I plan to do going into next week is I definitely plan to decrease the contracts by 1, and maybe I'll increase the orb stats contract by 1. So instead of it trading 1 micro, maybe we'll trade 2 for the orb, and then we'll trade 4 or 3 for retest. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate all of the support. Last video did amazing for someone with 346 followers. So I appreciate it. My plan is to continue editing these videos like normal. If you made it to the end of this video, I greatly appreciate watching this whole thing through. If you notice any feedback or anything at all that you can give me, I will take it and I will run with it if you drop it in the comment sections below. With that being said, I don't want to waste any more of your time. And until next time, ladies and gents, peace and love.